Hi from Antigua and Barbuda. I'm so delighted to be a part of the CaribCation author series and to share with you my books. You can see some of them behind me. My two picture books with Grace and Lost the Caribbean Sea Adventure. My first book, a coming-of-age story, The Boy from Willow Bend. My romance novel, Dancing Nude in the Moonlight. Not pictured as Oh God, it was an adult contemporary novel. And today I'll be reading from Musical Youth, which is also pictured. This is the second edition of Musical Youth, and it is a book that earned me second place in the Burt Award for Teen and Young Adult Caribbean Literature. And so I'll be sharing a little bit of that with you. Talking about color and girls always made him think of Andra Small, the first girl he'd ever checked for. They were in grade 6 when suddenly Andra had grown these twin peaks on her chest. Andra, the best athlete in school, who'd always been like one of the boys, was suddenly a girl. Weird. He felt bad for her when some of the guys started calling her Big Bobby Small. She'd started keeping to herself, had given up any sport where she had to play on a team, but she'd stuck with her running and continued killing it at cross country. Even back then, he'd known what was going on, how Andra, once she developed, preferred to do things alone. She didn't want to stand out in a group of girls. In fact, she stopped hanging out with the other girls altogether, or perhaps more correctly, they'd stopped wanting to hang out with her. One day, they'd been doing laps around the track during PE, everyone except Kong, who'd always got a pass because of his leg. Shaka had spent the time composing a rhyme in his head as he ran, too distracted to notice the burn in his legs. He didn't come back to himself until he'd felt the need for a pen and his notebook to write down the lyrics before they slipped away. That's when he'd realized everyone else was in the middle of the track. His classmates had dropped out one by one and were cheering on the only two runners left on the track, him and Andra Small. They'd been neck and neck, and he remembered the look of deep concentration on her face. Even now, he wondered what she'd been thinking about. He'd never been particularly athletic. He did what he could for his house on sports day, had shot hoops with his boys for as long as he could remember, and rooted for teams during the NBA playoffs, but he'd never cared about being an athlete himself. Andra had obviously cared. She'd pushed herself hard, invested in winning. Not only was he not invested in winning, now that his mind was back in his body, he was feeling every burn. He'd caught a stitch and pulled back, and she'd won. The girls had swarmed around her, and from where he'd stood, doubled over and panting, he'd seen the look on her face. She was happy to be one of the girls again. He'd felt good, like he'd given her something she'd been missing, though it wasn't like he'd let her win. She'd always been the better runner. His body had hurt for days afterwards, and when the track coach had chosen him and Andra for inter-school games, he tried everything he could to get out of it. Thankfully, the boys from the other schools had been more invested and more talented on the track than he was. The best he'd ever pulled off was third place. Endurance running was hard when you were actually in your body to feel the burn. Andra, though, had won her heats, and for once everyone had focused on her running and not on her chest. She'd also seemed to have gotten that area under control somehow. He figured that someone had recommended sports bras for her. At the time, he'd just been relieved that she'd gotten them to behave. They were distracting. And he'd never liked it when the other boys ogled her. Andra Small had been his first crush. And that is Shaka. He's one of two main characters in Musical Youth. The other main character whose point of view we see as well is Zahara. Now, Zahara is a teenage guitar player. She's a shy girl. I was able to draw on sense memory for myself as a teenage guitar player and former shy girl. In writing Zahara, and on the whole community of friends I had at the time, and the coming of age experiences to write the characters in Musical Youth. So I had to toss my mind back to the past, to being a musical theater kid, to singing in Joseph and His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and to playing guitar in the church choir, and just all the experiences, going to fetes and teen concerts and the beach and all those things, and just drawing on all those memories, drawing on life as we do in writing, whether it's the texture of light on one's hair or the memory of how something makes you feel. All of that can be put into your writing to enhance your characters and the story that you're telling. And that's what I was able to do with this book and with all my books and all my stories, really. The production that they're doing in the book is a production of the Dancing Granny, which is a picture book by an American writer of Antiguan descent, Ashley Bryan. And so I'm going to read a little bit of them readying that for production. Actually, the hectic thing that is the last night before production. Tempers were fraying. The curtain call was supposed to be done in dance, and they were just learning the moves the night before opening night. Everyone was on edge, especially the non-dancers like Zahara. On top of that, they were going to promote the show by performing it flash mob style in Market Square the following morning, Saturday morning, market day. It was already late and they still hadn't got it. She still hadn't got it. And Mr. Perry had just announced that they weren't leaving the theater until they did. Boss, you might well find the one black girl with no rhythm, Kong joked. Shaka shot him a glare and reached for her hand. Come on, he coaxed, you'll get it, no worry. Yeah, you will, Nicola said, stepping to the other side of her. Nicola did the shoulder shake like a shrug. She added the neck snap, the pumping of the chest like a heartbeat, and the sharp left-to-right motion of the hips. And that's where she lost Sahara. It was like trying to tap your head and rub your belly at the same time while holding your breath and trying to work out an algebra problem. Her brain got confused. Come, Shaka said, doing the rhythmic shrugging motion, just that. She followed suit, but then, just as she started to get that, Nicola's hands settled on her hips from behind, rocking with her side to side, side to side. And just as she started to feel like, yes, yes, mahabam, Nicola and Shaka let go. She felt like a child learning to ride a bicycle without training wheels. Not that she'd ever learned to ride a bike, but it's what she imagined that would feel like. She didn't give in to the disorientation, though. She kept moving. I got it, she said, and not even the words distracted her. Her body suddenly knew what to do. Okay, now add the hop, Shaka said, and it all fell apart again. She blamed Mr. Samuel. He'd insisted on taking charge of the curtain call and had waited to the last minute to drill them, after talking their ears off. 'Cause you see, in Africa, dance is not just this wiggle-up thing, he said, shaking his body. Dance is conversation between man and woman, man and nature, man and God. Is affirmation, is mourning, is celebration. It infused all areas of life. In Africa, baby born, they have a dance for that. Girl want to let boy know she interested. There's a dance for that. Man and woman marry, or maybe smarty dead, it have dance there for all that too. And you know what? You already know them because of the Allah we come from. So come, get up, let's dance. The girl playing Nancy's mother griped. He spent the whole summer asleep and now want to teach man for dance. Mrs. Samuel led them through the steps, talking as he demonstrated. Now story done, so we celebrating. Remember to smile, and make that smile come all through your big toe. He demonstrated the fast shrug, chest flex, hip sway action. This is Ethiopian, East Africa, lots of shoulder and neck action, you see like that. Isn't it Nancy from West Africa? Zahara snarked. She didn't mean to be rude, but if he was going to teach them such complicated movements, he should have started earlier. We're getting there, Mr. Samuel said. This is just the beginning. The choreographer was now pounding his stick on the wooden floor of the stage. Okay, break time over, he said. From the top. Yep, she definitely wanted to cry. I can relate to Zahara with the dancing in terms of the guitar playing because I was not talented on the guitar. But with practice, you can get better, and I did get better. I actually wrote songs on the guitar and actually won a prize for a song that I wrote from the Christmas Carol. They had a Christmas Carol competition back in the day, and the choir that I was with at the time recorded it and we submitted it. And so I actually have a prize for winning a song that I composed on the guitar that I don't play very well. And I still have the guitar. But someone who's very good at what they do is Shaka. And so I want to end with a little bit of Shaka doing his thing. Shaka's mind shut down during the performance. It wasn't unusual for his mind to take a little vacation while his body went to work, moving through patterns drilled into it over weeks of repetition and practice until he was nothing but movement and music. The love of music that began with his introduction to the greats by Papi had blossomed into something that felt as much a part of him as his arms, his legs, his beating heart. He couldn't explain it if he tried, and he couldn't live without it even if he wanted to. He lived for those moments, for giving his whole body over to the dance. In a way, he was more like the granny character in Brian's book than the Anansi character. After all, she was the one who, for the longest while, even when she knew what the trickster was up to, kept getting seduced by the music. It was like that Claudette Peters song that went, something, 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 something in the music. And that is a little bit of musical youth. I want to thank you so much for joining me today and for joining the CaribCation series. I want to thank CaribCation for inviting me to be a part of this series. I am Joanne C. Hillhouse, author from Antigua and Barbuda, and gal from Otters Antigua. Thank you, and you can also tune in for future editions of this series at CaribCation on Instagram Live. So I'll be tuning in, and I'm sure you will be too. And I thank you for tuning in today for a bit of musical youth. Have a good day.